Chapter 5 Markup as a Merchandising Tool Part 3. And let's talk about averaging markups and initial markup. First, regarding the averaging markups, retailers do not apply the same markup percent to all merchandise, therefore they want to check about this averaging markup. Merchandise must be priced to sell in a competitive environment. Thus, buyers must balance markups that are below average with above average markup to achieve the planned markup goal in this competitive environment. Averaging markup can apply to the markup on an entire stock of goods, a single purchase, or a group of purchases. And average markup is determined by working with total cost and total retail. So this is gonna be really important hint. The total cost, total retail, and you have to calculate total markup dollar. So 3 types of averaging. First, calculating markup percent needed on balance of merchandises when planned markup percent is none. Second, averaging cost when retail and markup percent are known. And third, averaging retail when cost and needed markup percent are known. And once again, here is the formula for markup percent. And this point, you have to get the total. For the markup dollar, so top part, total retail minus total cost is gonna be total dollar markup divided by total retail. This is the first one. So calculating markup percent needed on balance of purchases. So to calculate the markup percent needed on remaining purchase when planned markup percent are known, you can get all these A, B, C, D, E, F number. And first, it says total needed retail and markups are known. If you know that, you can calculate the cost. Because your A, total needs cost will be total needs retail multiplied with 100% minus markup percent. Another hint, always your retail percent will be 100%. And B, how to calculate your purchases at retail. That's gonna be number of units multiplied with the retail per unit. And you will get this in the next example. And I'll give you the number of units purchased, and also I'll give you the unit number. And C, purchases at cost is gonna be number of units multiplied with the cost per unit. And then you can calculate the balance if you got all this number. So let's go to the D, that's gonna be balance retail, and you can calculate it as total needs at retail minus purchase at retail. And E is gonna be balance cost, and that will be total needs at cost minus your purchased at cost. And if you calculated this, then you can get your balanced markup, which is gonna be your balance retail minus balance cost divided by your balance retail. And let's look at the example. Then you can know and you can determine all these figures. So a buyer for a children's department needs $12,000 worth of merchandise at retail. So that's total needs. She has already purchased 200 dresses that cost $18 each and will retail for $30 each. What markup percent must she obtain on the remaining purchase in order to average a 54% markup for the month? So what you need to do first, you have to calculate your total needs at cost. And at this point, you know your total needs of the retail, and also you know the markup percent. And again, your retail percent will be always 100. So what you can do to calculate your total needs at cost is gonna be your total needs at retail multiply with your cost percentage, which you can get it from your retail. That's gonna be 100% minus your 54% of the markup. So 46% will be cost percentage. So if you multiply 12,000 and 46%, then you will get this 5,520 as your total needs at cost. And B, purchased. On the question, you can get this answer. It gave you the unit number and also cost and retail. So it said she has already purchased 200 dresses. That means it's purchased. So 200 dresses at cost of $18 and it will retail for $30. So for your total purchase at retail, it's gonna be 200 multiplied with the 30, the retail price. So you will get this 6,000 as your total purchase at retail. And for the cost, same number of the dresses, 200 multiplied with the cost, which is $18. So 200 multiplied with 18, you will get this 3,600 as your total purchased at cost. Now you can calculate your balance. For your retail balance, that's gonna be total needs at retail minus total purchases at retail. So there will be 12,000 minus 6,000, so that is $6,000. How about the cost? That's same, but you will get the number from this part. So total needs at cost minus total purchases at cost. So that is 5,520 minus 3,600. Then you will get this 1,920 as your balance cost. So if you know this balance retail and balance cost, then now you can calculate your markup percentage. So the final question is that what markup percent must she obtain on the remaining purchases? So that will be for this balance, and you can calculate this based on this balance at retail, balance at cost. So that will be, you have to put this top retail minus cost. Then you can get this dollar markup. So 6,000 minus 1,920 divided by your retail. Once again, total retail minus total cost divided by total retail. Then you got this 68%. So that is that. You need to obtain, she need to obtain this 68% markup in order to average the 54 markup for the month. So that's gonna be answer for that. Now let's look at the example about averaging cost when retail and markup percent are known. So to determine this cost needed on remaining purchases when retail and planned markup percent are known, you can calculate this based on this table. So it says markup percent is known, also retail percent is known. Even though it doesn't give you the specific dollar amount of the retail, you know the retail percent. How much? 100%. Then you can calculate your total needs at retail. There's gonna be total units multiplied with your total retail per unit, and it's gonna be given in the example. And B, you can calculate total needs at cost. It's gonna be your total needs at retail multiplied with 100. That's retail percentage minus markup percent. That is cost percent. And C, you can calculate your purchases at cost by number of units multiplied with your cost per unit. And you can calculate the total cost if you know that, because that's gonna be total needs at cost minus purchases at cost. And then what you can do, you can calculate your balance unit cost. So like how much it need to be cost at least, you know. So that's gonna be balance total cost divided by number of units. So let's look at the example. A buyer plans to purchase 300 pairs of slacks for an anniversary sale to retail for $26 each. The buyer has already placed an order for 170 pairs at $12 each. That's gonna be the cost. What is the most he can pay for each remaining pair of slacks if he is to achieve the department markup goal of 52%? You can calculate from your total needs at retail. That's gonna be total number of the items multiplied with the retail price, and it's given in the question. So 300 pairs multiplied with your retail, which is gonna be 300 multiplied by 26. You got this $7,800 as your retail for total needs. Now you can calculate your total needs at cost, which is gonna be your total needs at retail multiplied with your cost percentage. And your cost percentage can be calculated based on your retail percentage and markup percentage. So that will be 7,800 multiplied with the 100% minus 52%, because retail minus markup is gonna be cost percent. So you got this 3,744 as your cost for the total needs cost. So your cost percentage was 48%. And then you got this total needs at cost for the dollar amount. So now you can calculate your purchases. Also, this is given in the example. It says buyer has already placed an order of 170 pairs at 12. So what you can do, you can simply multiply total pairs with the cost. So there will be 2,040. Then you can calculate your balance total cost, which is gonna be the difference between your total need minus purchase. And then if you know that, you can calculate the balance unit cost, because now you know how many units you need. How many units you need now? You needed 300, but then you purchased 170. So now you need 130 slacks. So what you can do for answering for E, that's gonna be D, what you got for the balance total cost divided by 130. So let's look at it. So for D, your total cost balance is gonna be 3,744 minus 2,040. So you got this 1,704 as your balance cost. So you can spend this much to buy more slacks. And the cost for each slack need to be, that's gonna be maximum. If you can get it like cheaper, that's gonna be better, because you have more like leftover amount to buy more product. But what's gonna be the maximum cost then? So what you can do, that's gonna be total cost, the balance cost divided by the number of slacks that you need. So that's gonna be $13.11. So that means that the most he can pay for each pair of slack for the remaining money, that's gonna be $13.11. All right, so now you calculate it based on your markup percentage, and you got all this information for this. And let's look at the averaging retail when cost and needed markup percent are known. To determine an average retail price for purchases made at 2 or more different cost prices, if you know the markup, you can calculate cost, and also you can calculate the retail. And for the A, total cost will be, and this will be given in the example too. You can calculate the total cost if you know the unit cost and number of units. And this AB means that maybe you have like few different items at the different cost and different number of those units. So it depends on like item 1, it's gonna be for item 2, and you can get total cost based on the cost of units and based on the number of units. And B, your total retail will be total cost divided by 100% minus markup percent, because your total retail can be calculated as cost dollar divided by cost percentage. That's gonna be your retail dollar. And C, unit retail is gonna be your total retail divided by number of units. And the example will help you to better understand this. So let's look at it. So a buyer for the men's department purchased a group of shirts that consisted of 10 shirts at $11 each, 20 shirts at $12 each, and 12 shirts at $14 each. He plans to sell all of the shirts at the same price. What unit retail price will result in a 58% markup? So the first question was the total cost, and the second question was total retail, and the third question was unit retail. And let's start to calculate the total unit. That's gonna be, your markup percent, and what I'm going to ask you to do first is gonna be total cost, and you can calculate it based on the unit, number of the units, and the dollar, the cost for each. So there's gonna be 10 shirts at 11 plus 20 shirts at 12 plus 12 shirts at 14. So if you combine all these, that's gonna be total cost, and that is 518. And what's gonna be the next step then? Now you need to calculate your total retail, and there will be your cost, total cost divided by cost percentage. So that is 518 divided by 100% minus 58, which is 42%. So if you calculate it, you can get this 1,233 and 33 cents. So once you know this total retail, you can calculate your unit retail because you know how many shirts you have. And you want to sell that at the same price, right? So how many shirts you have? That's going to be 10 plus 20 plus 12. So that's going to be 40. Then what you can do, total retail divided by this number of shirts will be the unit cost for the shirts. I mean the unit retail price. So that's gonna be 1,233.33 divided by 42. Then you will get $29.37. So at least you need to sell these shirts at $29.37 to keep that 58% markdown. All right. So you also learn how to averaging the retail when cost and needed markup percent are known. Then now we are going to talk about the next concept, which is the initial markup. We talked about the timing of the markup, and this initial markup is going to be your plan. And initial markup is the markup placed on merchandise received in order to cover the expenses and reductions and to provide a profit. So especially for this initial markup can be changed later. When you check it later for the maintained markup or cumulative markup, it may be changed because of many situations and so on. But this is gonna be your plan. And for your plan, you have to consider all possible expenses and your planned profit or planned reduction and planned sales. And here's how you can calculate your planned reduction. That's gonna be part of the component to calculate your initial markup. And your retail reduction is gonna be markdowns plus employee discounts plus special customer discount plus stock shortages. So any decrease in the value of your retail price, you need to consider that as your retail reduction. And you're gonna add this at the top, at the bottom, and the bottom of your formula for the initial markup percent, because you need to consider this at the beginning so that later when you figure out your profit, it's gonna be better. You know it's not gonna affect. So you need to think about all possible expenses and plan profit, plan net sale, and also this retail reduction. So your initial markup percent can be calculated as expenses plus profit plus reduction divided by net sales plus reduction. Once again, this is gonna be top part possible markup percentage that you wanna have divided by your total net sale. In this case, you didn't consider your alteration cost, some other parts. So I'm gonna show you the next slide about considering the alteration cost and your cash discount. So other factor can affect initial markup is gonna be workroom cost or alteration costs, and also cash discount. So previous slide, you calculated without considering this factor. But this time, you're going to consider this alteration cost and also the cash discount. This alteration cost also will affect your price of the retail price. And an example of the alteration cost is the expense associated with making changes or adjustment to the garment or the product, any kind of product. So retailers sometimes require to assemble products that are not fully assembled by the vendor. Then these additional costs are included in the retail value of the goods. So you need to consider this alteration cost, and you're going to put that as a possible markup, additional price, because that's going to influence your retail price. So what you're going to do, you're going to plus that alteration cost. That's gonna how much you're gonna pay more, so you're gonna put that at the top. But then if you have any cash discount, you can deduct that amount from the top. So if you consider this additional factor, that's gonna be expenses plus profit plus reduction plus alteration or workroom cost minus cash discount, and the bottom will be same. Let's look at the example. So determine the necessary initial markup percent for a department having these plan figures. So it has net sales, expenses, reduction, even alteration cost, and cash discount. So from the previous slide, you got this formula to calculate your initial markup, which is gonna be expenses plus profit plus reduction plus alteration minus cash discount divided by your planned net sales plus your reduction. So that will be, let's look at that. What are the expenses? 4,000. And your profit, planned profit was 5,000. And also your planned reduction is 10,000 plus alteration 900 minus cash discount divided by your net sale, planned net sale plus, don't forget, your reduction will go to the top and the bottom. So 100,000 plus 10,000. So if you combine all these, then you will get 55,150 and divide it by 110,000, then you will get 50.14% of your initial markup. So that's gonna be your planned, your initial markup. And once again, it's more likely to be changed if something happened, or if there are any additional costs, or if there are some like markdowns and so on, your final, like maintained markup will be changed. And your markup can be calculated with either dollars or percent of net sales, because your net sales is always, once again, 100%. And you just calculate your initial markup based on the dollar. So let's go ahead and look at the example based on the percentage. Also same, but you use the percentage. Determine the initial markup percent when that will be required to achieve a 4% profit using the following figure. And you have your expenses, employee discounts, and also markdowns, shortages, alterations, cash discount, and profit. So here are the formula, initial markup and reduction. And this one, it doesn't say just the reduction. So if it's given, there are some like information that you can calculate your reduction, then you have to calculate your total reduction. So let's look at that. So what can you put at the top? Expenses. You just don't worry about that the dollar amount. What you're gonna do, you're gonna put the percentage amount. So that's gonna be your expenses, 39.1% plus your profit percent is gonna be 4 plus, then what you can do, the reduction. What are the reduction percentage? Markdown, it has markdown, shortages, and employee discount. All these three components will be your markdown. the reductions, right? So you can put that plus here, plus, you remember the alteration is gonna be the plus 0.5% minus, where is this, the cash discount here, right? 0.6%. Then you have to divide it by your net sales plus reduction. Okay, at this point, your net sales, do you remember the percentage? It's 100%. Plus reduction is gonna be same as here, 4.2 plus 6.8 plus 1. So if you calculate this, you can get this one will be 12. So what you can do, you calculate the top part and divide it by the 112, then you can get 49.11 as your initial markup percent. So once again, this example, you were able to calculate your initial markup based on the percentage. And one last example. So calculate the initial markup percent that will enable the department to achieve a 9% profit using the following figure. And it's a little bit tricky combination of the other two questions that you just did, because it gave you the number, dollar amount, plus also it gave you some of that percentage information. So let's look at it. Net sales with the dollar amount and markdown with the percentage, employee discount, shortages, expenses, profit, cash discount, and alteration cost. And here is the hint. What you need to do, you have to make it in the same figure. So that means that you have to change that to the dollar figure. So what you're gonna do, only two figures here are in percentage, which are markdowns and profit. So you can calculate the markdown since you know your net sale, because that's gonna be net sale multiplied with the percentage of the markdown. So 220,000 multiplied with the 4%, you got this 8,800 as your dollar markdown plan. And then you can calculate your profit, because that's gonna be 9% and that's gonna be same. So what you're gonna do, net sales multiplied with the profit percent. So you got this 19,800 as your profit plan. Now you know this, so you can calculate your initial markup. So you're gonna use this dollar amount. So once again, what's gonna go to the top? Expenses, 95,000. And also profit plan, profit is 19,800 plus your planned reduction. And that's gonna be combination of your discount, the markdowns and employee discount and shortages, these three components. So you need to also know how to calculate this total reduction. So you got this 12,800, and then what's next? Alteration cost 2,600 minus your cash discount 5,400 divided by your net sales, which is gonna be 220,000 plus your reduction. So don't forget that the reduction will go to the top and the bottom. So if you calculate that, that's gonna be 124,880 divided by 232,800. You can pause this and go ahead and calculate. Try to add all these and try to calculate this, all this number. Then you can get this 53.61% as your initial markup. Okay, so you learn how to calculate your initial markup based on the dollar amount, and you also learn how to calculate your initial markup based on the percentage. And you also learn in this part, in this section, how to get the average markup and few different ways to calculate this amount. And we will continue to talk about some other types of markup, because this is a part of this first part of this timing of the markup and initial markup. And you're gonna learn about cumulative markup in the middle of the time and your maintained markup the next time. So that's it for chapter 5 part 3, and see you next time.